sure we're online. We are online. Okay, we're continuing with our Krishna book reading. Give me 1 second. Okay, let me get the guitar and we will chant something. All right. All right. What should we chant? Oh, here's a nice one. Bhakti Sadma Madan Mui Savatana Mate Shiguru Charana Padma Bhagati Sadma Madan Mui Savatana Mate Prasade Pai Bhavatori Adyaye Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite Hara Prasad Devai Bhavatori Adyaye Krishna Prapti Hoya Sutri Bhavana Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Pad, 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 Prabhupada, Matipo, Haribo, Haribo, Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parabhikacharya, also Teta Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Chanananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Ram Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Garadha Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Sayam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Ki Jai Mathuranam Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Srimati Glasadev Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hadi Hadbo. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to the assembled devotees, all glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarani. So let me read the translation. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates, by him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, we're going to continue with our study of Krishna book. We are on the 30th chapter now, which is the second chapter that details the Rasa Lila dance. And we're at the point where all the gopis are looking for Krishna. And they've noticed that there are two sets of footprints. And they understand that the second set of footprints is Srimati Radharani, so they are feeling a little transcendently envious. But we'll see what happens with this. So let's go and start the Krishna book. Om Gana Timiranda Shah Gananjana Shlakya Chakshur Unmiritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay. Let's share the screen. Where is that window? Here it is. All right. Just get set up here so we can read and be aware of what's happening. So, we're continuing right here. In this way, all the gopis pointed out the faults of the particular gopi who had been taken alone by Krishna. They said that this chief gopi, Radharani, must be very proud of her position, thinking herself the greatest of the gopis. Yet how could Krishna take her away alone, leaving all of us aside, unless she is extraordinarily qualified and beautiful? She must have taken Krishna into the deep forest and told him, "My dear Krishna, I am now very tired." Let me set the volume on this thing a little higher. Give me 1 second. Okay, that should do it. She might have told Krishna, she must have, and told him, "My dear Krishna, I am now very tired. I cannot go any further. Please carry me wherever you like." When Krishna was spoken to in this way, he might have told Radharani, "All right, better get on my shoulder." But immediately Krishna must have disappeared. And now Radharani must be lamenting for him. "My dear lover, my dearest, you are so fine and so powerful. Where have you gone? I am nothing but your most obedient maidservant. I am very much aggrieved. Please come and be with me again." Krishna, however, is not coming to her. He must be watching her from a distant place and enjoying her sorrow. All the gopis then went further and further into the forest, searching out Krishna. But when they learned that actually Radharani was left alone by Krishna, they became very sorry. This is the test of Krishna consciousness. In the beginning, they were a little envious that Krishna had taken Radharani alone, leaving aside all the other gopis. But as soon as they knew that Krishna had also left Radharani and that she was alone, lamenting for him, they became more sympathetic to her. The gopis found Radharani and heard everything from her about how she had misbehaved with Krishna and how she was proud and was insulted for her pride. After hearing all this, they became actually very sympathetic. Then all the gopis, including Radharani, proceeded further into the forest until they could no longer see the moonlight. When they saw that it was getting gradually darker, they stopped. Their mind and intelligence became absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. They all imitated the activities of Krishna and his speeches. Due to their heart and soul being completely given to Krishna, they began to chant his glories, completely forgetting their family interests. In this way, all the gopis returned to the bank of the Yamuna and assembled there, and expecting that Krishna must return to them, they simply engaged in chanting the glories of Sri Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we're going to continue. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 30th chapter of Krishna. Krishna hiding from the gopis. So chapter 31 is entitled The Songs of the Gopis, or by the gopis, sorry about that. One gopi said, "My dear Krishna, ever since you took birth in this land of Brajabhumi, everything appears to be glorious. The land of Vrindavan has become glorious, and it is as if the goddess of fortune is personally always existing here. But it is only we who are very unhappy, because we are searching for you, but cannot see you with our greatest effort. Our life is completely dependent upon you, therefore, we request that you again come to us." Another gopi said, "My dear Krishna, you are the life and soul even of the lotus flower that grows on the water of the lakes, made transparent by the clear rains of autumn. Although the lotus flowers are so beautiful, without your glance they fade away. Similarly, without you, we are also dying. Actually, we are not your wives, but are your slaves. You never spent any money for us, yet we are simply attracted by your glance. Now, if we die without receiving your glance, you will be responsible for our deaths. Certainly, the killing of women is a great sin, and if you do not come to us and we die, you will suffer the reactions of sin." So, of course, there's no question of Krishna suffering or enjoying karma like that. But the gopis are using this argument in a sort of humorous way to try to convince Krishna to come. "So please come to see us." Do not think that one can be killed only by certain weapons. We are being killed by your absence. You should consider how you were responsible for killing women. We are always grateful to you because you have protected us many times from the poisonous water of the Yamuna, from the serpent Kaliya, from Bakasura, from the anger of Indra and his torrents of rain, from the forest fire, and so many other incidents. You are the greatest and most powerful of all. It is wonderful for you to protect us from so many dangers, but we are surprised that you are neglecting us at this moment. Dear Krishna, dear friend, we know very well that you are not actually the son of Mother Yashoda or the coward man Nanda Maharaj. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Super Soul of all living entities. You have, out of your own causeless mercy, appeared in this world, requested by Lord Brahma, for the protection of the world. It is by your kindness only that you have appeared in the dynasty of Yadu. O best in the dynasty of Yadu, if anyone afraid of this materialistic way of life takes shelter at your lotus feet, you never deny him protection. Your movements are sweet, and you are independent, touching the goddess of fortune with one hand, and in the other bearing a lotus flower. That is your extraordinary feature. Please therefore come before us and bless us with the lotus flower in your hand. Dear Krishna, you are the killer of all the fears of the inhabitants of Vrindavan. You are the supremely powerful hero, and we know that you can kill the unnecessary pride of your devotee, as well as the pride of women like us, simply by your beautiful smile. We are simply your maidservants and slaves. Please therefore accept us by showing us your beautiful lotus-like face. Dear Krishna, actually we have become very lusty, having been touched by your lotus feet. Your lotus feet certainly kill all kinds of sinful activities of devotees who have taken shelter there. You are so kind that even the ordinary animals take shelter under your lotus feet. Your lotus feet are also the residence of the goddess of fortune, yet you danced on the heads of the Kaliya serpent with them. Now we are requesting you to kindly place your lotus feet on our breasts and pacify our lusty desires to touch you. O Lord, your attractive eyes like the lotus are so nice and pleasing. Your sweet words are so fascinating that they please even the greatest scholars, who also become attracted to you. We are also attracted by your speaking and by the beauty of your face and eyes. Please therefore satisfy us by your nectarian kisses. Dear Lord, words spoken by you or words describing your activities are full of nectar. And simply by speaking or hearing your words, one can be saved from the blazing fire of material existence. Great demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva are always engaged in chanting the glories of your words. They do so to eradicate the sinful activities of all living entities in the material world. If one simply tries to hear your transcendental words, he can very quickly be elevated to the platform of pious activities. For Vaishnavas, your words give transcendental pleasure, and saintly persons who are engaged in distributing your transcendental message all over the world are first-class charitable persons. So, in parentheses, this was confirmed by Rupa Goswami when he addressed Lord Chaitanya as the most magnificent incarnation, because he distributed the words of Krishna and love of Krishna free of charge all over the world. So it's very interesting to note that at this particular point, the gopis seem to be in full knowledge of the Siddhanta, which is really interesting, because to have an intimate relationship with Krishna, you have to forget that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And how is it the gopis are speaking in such an erudite fashion? Well, the answer is that Krishna, in their hearts, is actually inspiring them, just like we hear in the Bhagavad Gita, Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam, Yene Mam Ubhyanti Te, Tesham Satyayuktanam, etc. That Krishna is giving intelligence, and in spite of not being scholars, obviously these coward girls were not scholars and had to study the Vedas or anything like that. Of course, they probably heard from the Brahmanas, because it was a culture where the Vaishyas would actually serve the Brahmanas and listen to the Brahmanas. But still, they're speaking in such a way as to be better than the most erudite scholars. So the Krishna is giving intelligence. And then later on, when they interact with Krishna, they actually forget that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and all the philosophy is forgotten at that particular point. So when the devotees need to remember the philosophy, then Krishna allows us to remember the philosophy. And when the devotees need to forget the philosophy in order to interact with Krishna in an intimate way, then the Yogamaya potency of the Lord allows the devotees or covers the devotees in such a way that they forget that Krishna is God. Just like even with Krishna that applies. That sometimes Krishna is remembering, I'm the Supreme Personality of God. Of course, in the Bhagavad Gita, he's very clear that he understands he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And there's no doubt about it. And then sometimes Krishna forgets when he's interacting with his friends or with the gopis or with his parents in a very intimate way. When Krishna was interacting before the Battle of Kurukshetra with Arjuna in a very intimate way, and they were lying on the same bed and they were joking with each other, Krishna was forgetting that he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here the gopis are actually remembering, but the remembering for the purpose of trying to meet with Krishna. So they're understanding that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is actually secondary for the gopis. Dear Krishna, the gopis continued, you are very cunning. You can imagine how much we are distressed simply by remembering your cunning smile, your pleasing glance, your walking with us in the forest of Vrindavan, and your auspicious meditations. Your talks with us in lonely places were heartwarming. Now we are all aggrieved to remember your behavior. Please save us, dear Krishna. Certainly, you know how much we are saddened when you go out of Vrindavan village to tend the cows in the forest. How we are afflicted simply to think that your soft lotus feet are being pricked by the dry grass and the tiny stones in the forest. We are so attached to you that we always think simply of your lotus feet. Now that's also very important. Say, why are they just thinking simply of his lotus feet? Because when you think of Krishna's lotus feet, or the lotus feet of a pure devotee, you think of service. So that's why we begin our meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead with his lotus feet. And if you're doing arti, you start with the lotus feet and then go around. So I'm a servant. It reminds you, I'm a servant of Krishna. O Krishna, when you return from the pasturing ground with the animals, we see your face covered by your curly hair and dusted by the hoof dust of the cows. We see your mildly smiling face, and our desire to enjoy you increases. Oh, dear Krishna, you are the supreme lover, and you always give shelter to surrendered souls. You fulfill everyone's desire. Your lotus feet are worshipped even by Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe. On whoever worships your lotus feet, you without a doubt always bestow your benedictions. So kindly be pleased with us and keep your lotus feet on our breasts, and thus relieve our present distresses. Dear Krishna, we are seeking your kisses, which you offer even to your flute. The vibration of your flute enchants the whole world and our hearts also. Kindly, therefore, return and kiss us with your mouth of nectar. So, let's see, we did the second part of 30. We did all of 31. And we can continue. We still have time. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 31st chapter of Krishna Song by the Gopis. And chapter 32 is entitled Krishna Returns to the Gopis. When Lord Krishna finally reappeared among the assembled gopis, he looked very beautiful, just befitting a person with all kinds of opulences. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated, Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibha Vitabayi. Krishna alone is not particularly beautiful, but when his energy, especially his pleasure energy, represented by Radharani, expands, he looks very magnificent. The Mayavada conception of perfection and absolute truth without potency is due to insufficient knowledge, Actually, outside the exhibition of his different potencies, the absolute truth is not complete. That's a very interesting statement Prabhupada made here. Let's go up a little bit. Not particularly beautiful. So, obviously, Krishna is unlimitedly beautiful. But when he's not with Radharani, then you're not actually seeing Krishna. That's the point. Because Krishna is never alone. He's always with Radharani. You cannot separate Krishna from Radharani. And also Prabhupada is indicating his dedication to Radharani at that particular point by that statement. So, it's a very esoteric understanding of that statement by Srila Prabhupada. Ananda Chinmaya Rasa means that his body is a transcendental form of eternal bliss and knowledge. Krishna is always surrounded by different potencies, and therefore he is perfect and beautiful. We understand from the Brahma Samhita and Skanda Purana that Krishna is always surrounded by many thousands of goddesses of fortune. The gopis are all goddesses of fortune, and Krishna took them hand in hand on the bank of the Yamuna. It is said in the Skanda Purana that out of many thousands of gopis, 16,000 are prominent, and out of those 16,000 gopis, 108 are especially prominent. Out of these 108 gopis, 8 gopis are still more prominent. Out of those 8 gopis, Radharani and Chandravali are even more prominent. And out of these 2 gopis, Radharani is the most prominent. So, of course, Chandravali is the so-called competitor of Radharani. And, of course, she, Chandravali, is an expansion of Radharani, and she's serving Radharani in that way to spice up the relationship so that Radharani can exhibit her man, that means her anger, and transcendental envy. But actually they love each other. That is, Radharani loves Chandravali and Chandravali loves Radharani. It's a mood of service. When Krishna entered the forest on the bank of the river Yamuna, the moonlight dissipated the surrounding darkness. Due to this season, flowers like the kunda and kadamba were blooming, and a gentle breeze was carrying their aroma. Due to the aroma, the bees were also flying in the breeze, thinking that the aroma was honey. The gopis made a seat for Krishna by leveling the soft sand and placing their cloths over it. The gopis who were gathered there had almost all been followers of the Vedas. So this is the particular group of gopis that's being mentioned, which I mentioned in a previous class, that they were actually sages in Dandakaranya forest, observing Lord Ramchandra, and here Prabhupada is going to explain that. In their previous births, during Lord Ramchandra's advent, they had been Vedic scholars who desired the association of Lord Ramchandra in conjugal love. Ramachandra had given them the benediction that they would be present for the advent of Lord Krishna and he would fulfill their desires. During Krishna's advent, the Vedic scholars took birth in the shape of the gopis in Vrindavan. As young gopis, they got the association of Krishna in fulfillment of their previous birth's desire. The ultimate goal of their perfect desire was attained, and they were so joyous that they had nothing further to desire. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. If one attains the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he has no desire for anything. Wow. When the gopis had Krishna in their company, not only all their grief, but their lamenting in the absence of Krishna was relieved. They felt they had no desire to be fulfilled. Fully satisfied in the company of Krishna, they spread their cloths on the ground. These garments were made of fine linen and smeared with a red kumkum which decorated their breasts. With great care they spread a sitting place for Krishna. Krishna was their life and soul, and they created a very comfortable seat for him. Sitting on the seat amongst the gopis, Krishna became more beautiful. Great yogis like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, or even Lord Shesha and others always try to fix their attention upon Krishna in their hearts, but here the gopis actually saw Krishna seated before them on their cloths. In the society of the gopis, Krishna looked very beautiful. They were the most beautiful damsels within the 3 worlds, and they assembled together around Krishna. Krishna seated himself beside each of the many gopis, and it may be asked herein how he did this. There is a significant word in this verse, Ishvara, that means the controller. As is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Ishvara Sarvabhutanam, Bhagavad Gita 18:61. So the rest of the word, Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Hridesha Arjuna Tishati Brahmayan Sarvabhutani Yantra Rudani Maya, which basically means that the Supreme Ishvara controller is situated in everyone's heart and directing everyone's wanderings. Ishvara refers to the Supreme Lord as the Supersoul seated in everyone's heart. Krishna also manifested this potency of expansion as Paramatma in this gathering with the gopis. Krishna was sitting by the side of each gopi unseen by the others. Krishna was so kind to the gopis that instead of sitting in their hearts to be appreciated in yogic meditation, he seated himself by their sides. By seating himself outside, he showed special favor to the gopis, who were the select beauties of all creation. Having gotten their most beloved Lord, the gopis began to please him by moving their eyebrows and smiling, and also by suppressing their anger. Some of them took his lotus feet on their laps and massaged them, and while smiling, they confidentially expressed their their anger and said, "Dear Krishna, we are ordinary women of Vrindavan, and we do not know much about Vedic knowledge, what is right and what is wrong. We therefore put a question to you, and since you are very learned, you can answer it properly. In dealings between lovers, we find that there are three classes of men. One class simply receives, another class reciprocates favorably, even if the lover is very contrary, and the third class neither acts contrary nor answers favorably in dealings of love." So out of all these three classes, which do you prefer, or which do you call honest? In answer, Krishna said, "My dear friends, persons who simply reciprocate the loving dealings of the other party are just like merchants." It's interesting. They give in loving affairs as much as they get from the other party. Practically, there is no question of love. It is simply self-interested or self-centered business dealings. Even those without a tinge of loving affairs are better than these merchants, better than the first class, the second class of men who love in spite of the opposite party's contrariness. Such sincere love can be seen when the father and mother love their children in spite of their children's neglect. The third class neither reciprocate nor neglect. They can be further divided into two classes. One comprises the self-satisfied, who do not require anyone's love. They are called Atmarama, which means they are absorbed in thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and so do not care whether one loves them or not. But another class comprises ungrateful men. They are called callous. The men in this group revolt against superior persons. For instance, a son, in spite of receiving all kinds of things from loving parents, may be callous and not reciprocate. Those in this class are generally known as Guru Druha. Wow. Which means they receive favors from the parents or the spiritual master and yet neglect them. I mean, someone who is ungrateful to the Guru. Krishna indirectly answered the questions of the gopis, even those questions which implied that Krishna did not properly reciprocate their dealings. In answer, Krishna said that he, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is self-satisfied, so he's Atmarama. He does not require anyone's love, but at the same time he said that he is not ungrateful. "My dear friends," Krishna continued, "you might be aggrieved by my words and acts, but you must know that sometimes I do not reciprocate my devotees' dealings with me. My devotees are very much attached to me, but sometimes I do not reciprocate their feelings properly in order to increase their love for me more and more." It's a very interesting statement. Let me read that. "But sometimes I do not reciprocate their feelings properly in order to increase their love for me more and more." So in other words, that sometimes, like we experienced before in the previous chapter, Krishna separated himself from the gopis and the gopis couldn't find Krishna. And that was to increase their hankering and love for Krishna. If I can be very easily approached by them, they might think Krishna is so easily available. So sometimes they do not respond. If a person has no money but after some time accumulates some wealth and then loses it, he will think of the lost property 24 hours a day. Similarly, In order to increase the love of my devotees, sometimes I appear to be lost to them, and instead of forgetting me, they feel their loving sentiments for me increase. My dear friends, do not think for a moment that I have been dealing with you as I do with ordinary devotees. I know what you are. You have forsaken all kinds of social and religious obligations. You have given up all connection with your parents. Without caring for social convention and religious obligations, you have come to me and loved me, and I am so much obliged to you that I cannot treat you as ordinary devotees. Do not think that I was away from you. I was near to you. I was simply seeing how much you were anxious for me in my absence. So please do not try to find fault with me. Because you consider me so dear to you, kindly excuse me if I have done anything wrong. I cannot repay your continuous love for me even throughout the lifetimes of the demigods and the heavenly planets. It is impossible to repay you or show enough gratitude for your love. Therefore, please be satisfied by your own pious activities. Famous quote. You have displayed exemplary attraction for me, overcoming the greatest difficulties arising from family connections. Please be satisfied with your highly exemplary character, for it is not possible for me to repay my debt to you. The exemplary character of devotional service manifested by the devotees of Vrindavan is the purest type of devotion. It is enjoined in authoritative shastras that devotional service must be haituki and apratiyata. Haituki means without any material cause, self-centeredness. Apratiyata means it must continue under any and all circumstances. In other words, it's unbroken. This means that devotional service to Krishna cannot be checked by political or religious convention. The stage of devotional service is always transcendental. The gopis particularly showed pure devotional service toward Krishna, so much so that Krishna himself remained indebted to them. Lord Chaitanya thus said that the devotional service manifested by the gopis in Vrindavan excelled all other methods of approaching the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 32nd chapter of Krishna. Krishna returns to the gopis. So we are going through Krishna book really quickly. These are short chapters, actually. Chapter 33, description of the Rasa dance. Thus, hearing the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna speaking to pacify them, the gopis became very much pleased. They became completely relieved of the great suffering of separation, not only by hearing the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but also by touching his hands and legs. After this, the Supreme Personality of Godhead began his Rasa dance. A dance in the midst of many girls is called a Rasa dance. So Krishna began to dance among the most beautiful and fortunate girls within the three worlds. The gopis of Vrindavan, who were so attracted to him, danced with Krishna hand in hand. Krishna's Rasa dance should never be compared to any kind of material dance, such as a ball dance or a society dance. The Rasa dance is a completely spiritual performance. In order to establish this fact, Krishna, the supreme mystic, expanded himself into many forms and stood beside each gopi. Placing his hands on the shoulders of the gopis on both sides of him, he began to dance in their midst. The mystic expansions of Krishna were not perceived by the gopis because Krishna appeared alone to each of them. Each gopi thought that Krishna was dancing with her alone. Amazing. So in other words, they didn't notice that Krishna was dancing with all the gopis. Above that wonderful dance flew many airplanes carrying the denizens of the heavenly planets, who were very eager to see the wonderful dance of Krishna with the gopis. The Gandharvas and Kinnaras began to sing, and accompanied by their respective wives, all the Gandharvas began to shower flowers on the dancers. As the gopis and Krishna danced together, a very blissful musical sound was produced from the tinkling of their waist bells, ankle bells, ornaments, and bangles. It appeared that Krishna was a greenish sapphire locket in the midst of a golden necklace decorated with valuable stones. While Krishna and the gopis danced, they displayed extraordinary bodily features. The movements of their legs, they're placing their hands on one another, the movements of their eyebrows, they're smiling, and the movements of the gopis' breasts, clothes, and earrings, their cheeks, their hair with flowers. As Krishna and the gopis sang and danced, these combined to appear like clouds, thunder, snow, and lightning. Krishna's bodily features appeared just like a group of clouds. The gopis' songs were like thunder. Their beauty appeared to be just like lightning in the sky, and the drops of perspiration visible on their faces appeared like falling snow. In this way, the gopis and Krishna fully engaged in dancing. The necks of the gopis became tinted with red due to their desire to enjoy Krishna more and more. To satisfy them, Krishna began to clap his hands in time with their singing. Actually, the whole world is full of Krishna's singing, but it is appreciated in different ways by different kinds of living entities. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Yayatamam prapajante tam sadaiva bhajameham. That's from the Bhagavad Gita 4:11. As they approach me, I reciprocate accordingly, Krishna says. Tam sadaiva bhajameham. Krishna is dancing, and every living entity is also dancing, but there's a difference between the dancing in the spiritual world and that in the material world. This is expressed by the author of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, who says that the master dancer is Krishna and everyone else is his servant. Everyone is trying to imitate Krishna's dancing. Those who are actually in Krishna consciousness respond rightly to the dancing of Krishna. They do not try to dance independently. But those in the material world try to imitate Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The living entities are dancing under the direction of Krishna's Maya and are thinking they are equal to Krishna, but this is not a fact. In Krishna consciousness, this misconception is absent, for a person in Krishna consciousness knows that Krishna is the Supreme Master and everyone is his servant. One has to dance to please Krishna, not to imitate or attempt to become equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The gopis wanted to please Krishna, and therefore as Krishna sang, they all responded and encouraged him, saying, "Well done, well done." Sometimes they presented beautiful music for his pleasure, and he responded by praising their singing. So, of course, in the material world, people are forced to act according to the three modes of material nature. And they are controlled like marionettes are controlled by a marionetteer. So, Nihikaschit Shanamapi Jatatishtati Karmakrit Karyateyas Yavasa Karma Sarva Prakti Jagirnar. Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the modes of material nature. When some of the gopis became very tired from dancing and moving their bodies, they placed their hands on the shoulders of Sri Krishna. Then their hair loosened and flowers fell to the ground. When they placed their hands on Krishna's shoulder, they became overwhelmed by the fragrance of his body, which emanated from the lotus, other aromatic flowers, and the pulp of sandalwood. They became filled with attraction for him, and they began to kiss him. Some gopis touched Krishna cheek to cheek, and Krishna began to offer them chewed betel nuts from his mouth, which they accepted with great pleasure by kissing. And by accepting those betel nuts, the gopis spiritually advanced. The gopis became tired after long singing and dancing. Krishna was dancing beside them, and to alleviate their fatigue, they took Krishna's hand and placed it on their raised breasts. Krishna's hand, as well as the breasts of the gopis, are eternally auspicious. Therefore, when they combined, both of them became spiritually enhanced. The gopis so enjoyed the company of Krishna, the husband of the goddess of fortune, that they forgot that they had any other husbands in this world. And upon being embraced by the arms of Krishna and dancing and singing with him, they forgot everything. Srimad Bhagavatam thus describes the beauty of the gopis while they were in the Rasa dancing with Krishna. There were lotus flowers over both their ears, and their faces were decorated with sandalwood pulp. They wore tilak, and there were drops of perspiration on their smiley mouths. From their feet came the tinkling sound of ankle bells and bangles. The flowers within their hair were falling to the lotus feet of Krishna, and he was very satisfied. As stated in the Brahma Samhita, all these gopis are expansions of Krishna's pleasure potency. Touching their bodies with his hands and looking at their pleasing eyes, Krishna enjoyed the gopis exactly as a child enjoys playing with the reflection of his body in a mirror. When Krishna touched the different parts of their bodies, the gopis felt surcharged with spiritual energy. They could not adjust their loosened clothes, although they tried to keep them adjusted properly. Their hair and garments became scattered, and their ornaments loosened as they forgot themselves in the company of Krishna. While Krishna was enjoying the company of the gopis in the Rasa dance, the astonished demigods and their wives gathered in the sky. The moon, being afflicted with a sort of lust, began to watch the dance and became stunned with wonder. The gopis had prayed to the goddess Katyayani to have Krishna as their husband. Now Krishna was fulfilling their desire by expanding himself in as many forms as there were gopis and enjoying them exactly like a husband. Srila Shukadeva Goswami has remarked that Krishna is self-sufficient. He is Atma Rama. He doesn't need anyone else for his satisfaction. But because the gopis wanted Krishna as their husband, he fulfilled their desire. When Krishna saw that the gopis were tired from dancing with him, he immediately began to wipe his hands over their faces so their fatigue would be relieved. In order to reciprocate the kind hospitality of Krishna, the gopis began to look at him lovingly. They were overjoyed by the auspicious touch of the hand of Krishna. Their smiling cheeks shone with beauty, and they began to sing the glories of Krishna with transcendental pleasure. Because the gopis were pure devotees, the more they enjoyed Krishna's company, the more they became enlightened with his glories, and thus they reciprocated with him. They wanted to satisfy Krishna by glorifying his transcendental pastimes. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of all masters, and the gopis wanted to worship him for his unusual exhibition of mercy upon them. The gopis and Krishna enter the water of the Yamuna just to relieve their fatigue from the Rasa dance. The lily flower garlands around the necks of the gopis were strewn to pieces due to the gopis embracing the body of Krishna, and the flowers were reddish from being smeared with the kumkum on their breasts. The bumblebees were humming about in order to get honey from the flowers. Krishna and the gopis entered the water of the Yamuna just as an elephant enters a water tank with his many female companions. Both the gopis and Krishna forgot their real identities, playing in the water, enjoying each other's company, and relieving the fatigue of Rasa dance. The gopis began to splash water on the body of Krishna, and all the while smiling, and Krishna enjoyed this. As Krishna was taking pleasure in the joking words and splashing water, the demigods in the heavenly planets showered flowers. The demigods thus praised the super excellent Rasa dance of Krishna, the supreme enjoyer, and his pastimes with the gopis in the water of the Yamuna. After this, Lord Krishna and the gopis came out of the water and began to stroll along the bank of the Yamuna, where a nice breeze was blowing, carrying the aroma of different kinds of flowers over the water and land. While strolling on the bank of the Yamuna, Krishna recited various kinds of poetry. He thus enjoyed the company of the gopis in the soothing moonlight of autumn. Sex desire is especially excited in the autumn season, but the wonderful thing about Krishna's association with the gopis is that there was no question of sex desire. It was as clearly stated in the Bhagavad description by Shukadeva Goswami of Avaruddha Thorata. The sex impulse was completely controlled. There is a distinction between Lord Krishna's dancing with the gopis and the ordinary dancing of living entities within the material world. In order to clear up further misconceptions about the Rasa dance and the affairs of Krishna and the gopis, Maharaj Parikshit, the hero of Srimad Bhagavatam, told Shukadeva Goswami, Krishna appeared on the earth to establish the regulative principles of religion and to curb the predominance of irreligion. But the behavior of Krishna and the gopis might encourage irreligious principles in the material world. I am simply surprised that he would act in such a way, enjoying the company of other wives in the dead of night. This statement of Maharaj Parikshit was very much appreciated by Shukadeva Goswami. The answer anticipates the abominable acts of the Mayavadi impersonalists who place themselves in the position of Krishna and enjoy the company of young girls and women. Let's see how much more we have in this chapter. Actually, quite a bit. Okay. So maybe we can end here for today. And then we can take some questions because we covered quite a bit. So this is chapter 33, which we just started. Okay. So you can unmute yourselves as normal, or raise your hand, or type in the text window if you have a question. Rishikesh, you have a question.
Krishna Gurudev, my business.
Haribol.
My question is, how does Krishna deal with ordinary devotees like myself? If we do not get reciprocation, how do I increase my anchoring for him? Where I have no experience of even meeting him.
How did he deal with you? According to your Yayatam Prapajante Tam Sataiva Bajamyaham Mama Vartmanam Arjante. Manusha Partha Sarvasha, that Krishna is reciprocating with you according to how
How do
you
I
sort of.
understand, Gurudev?
How do you understand? Uh, that's an interesting question. You understand by reading the Bhagavad Gita. You understand by associating with the devotees. You understand by how you are getting detached from the material world. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayati Asu Vairagyam Yanam Chayada Haitakam. So one Prabhupada said one could judge their level of advancement in one sense by seeing how detached they are from different things in the material world, particularly detached from our body, and which is our attachment to the body is in a body. The body is not in a body, but the attachment to the body is in a body. So how attached we are to the body, how attached we are to things pertaining to the body, how attached we are to our country, how attached we are to our family. Of course, we should be very attached to acting properly with our family, acting properly, taking care of the body. But it has to be with the motivation of pleasing Krishna. Why do I take care of the body? I take care of the body because it belongs to Krishna. It's my instrument for serving Krishna. Just like one takes care of his car because it's the instrument for carrying out whatever purpose you're using the car for, hopefully for serving Krishna. So, Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita, Janayati Asu Vairagyam, that you start to get detached. Detached means, these things don't bother you. You become equal to different things, friends and enemies, happiness and distress. I was just reading the Bhagavad Gita in the sixth chapter where it talks about a yogi. An advanced yogi is actually equal. He sees pebbles and gold is the same. Of course, we understand for the service of Krishna, we see pebbles and gold differently. So, Vairagya and also Jnana Vairagya. One gets, knowledge, realization. Krishna actually sends realization. Sometimes those realizations get so intense, they're called spurtis. A spurti is when one actually has a vision. In the Jivadharma of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, there's a sannyasi who was a Mayavadi sannyasi before, and he joins the devotees, and one day he actually has a vision of Mayapur the way it was when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was present. So that's an extreme realization. But then Krishna gives us realizations from within the heart. Dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamamupiyantite. So that's how one knows Krishna's reciprocating. It's not that Krishna's going to reciprocate with us right now by calling us to dance with him. It's not that Krishna's going to say, Rishikesh, would you dance with me tonight? I don't think Krishna's going to do that right now. Maybe in the future, but then your name won't be Rishikesh anymore. It'll be Rishikini or something like that. Anyway, whatever. I'm just joking. Then, because then you won't be identifying yourself with your material body. So that's how Jnana and Vairagya. That's how we know Krishna. And I've experienced that in my own Krishna consciousness. That things, I lose a taste for things in this material world. The same things that I was so attracted to in the beginning when I first joined the Krishna conscious movement. It's just not whatever. They're not attractive anymore. Same things. I'm the same person, and just not attracted. Someone asked me to go see a movie or something like that. It's just boring. I would just prefer to hear Krishna's pastimes and above all, to help others come closer to Krishna. To me, that is actually the most important thing. Okay, here's another question. Where did Krishna go when he disappeared from the Rasa dance? He just disappeared from their vision. I mean, he was in the forest. Krishna's expert. He can hide out. You can say, I can't see Krishna in the heart. Where did he go? He's there. but you can't see him. So Krishna can make himself invisible, and Krishna does that often. He makes himself invisible. So here's another one. Please accept my humble obeisance. The gopis went to Krishna in joy with him. This is desire. How is it pure? Because Krishna will be satisfied by that gopis' desire also. Because their desire is to please Krishna. Try to understand. Yes, there's a desire to enjoy with him because that gives Krishna pleasure. Ultimately, you can say, yes, the gopis have a desire to enjoy, but their enjoyment is Krishna's happiness. And that's described in the last chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. That if my unhappiness, or my misery, and this is Radharani speaking, of course, as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is presenting the Shikshashtaka prayers, if Krishna gets pleasure with my unhappiness, I'm just paraphrasing it right now, I don't remember the exact quote. If it gives Krishna pleasure to see me unhappy, then my unhappiness is my happiness. Now that's hard for us to understand. Because, who wants to be unhappy? But the gopis love Krishna so much. And of course there's that typical example that the gopis were willing to go to hell by giving the foot dust, or that is the dust from their feet, to cure Krishna's headache, whereas the other devotees were not willing to do that because they were worried about going to hell. So that's the mood of the gopis. That's the mood of the gopis. So their desire to enjoy with Krishna is because it gives Krishna happiness. Okay. Hope that's easy to understand, or difficult to understand, as the case may be. Okay, here we have another question. Sam. You can unmute yourself, Sam.
Hare Krishna Maharaj,
How do you...
should I go about living life and whatever happens, tell myself it's Krishna's will, whether happy or sad, everything that happens to me is Krishna's will?
Not necessarily. Some things are your own doing. If we do something foolish, we can't say it's Krishna's will. If I eat too much and I get sick, oh, it's Krishna's will. No, you ate too much and you got sick. So there's 5 factors of action. So it's not that everything that happens is Krishna's will, but things that are, the way I usually explain it is whatever is outside, completely outside of our control, then we understand that's Krishna's will. But things that have, we have some choice in, or some ability, then it may be a little mixed like that. But in any case, one can see Krishna everywhere and see everything in Krishna, even when you're dealing with the material world. I mean, oftentimes I give the example that when I got a speeding ticket, I could say, well, that's Krishna's will, I got a speeding ticket. No, I sped. So, and the material energy responded in a specific way, and it was Krishna's will, of course, that I got that reaction. But you can't say, it's Krishna's will I sped, Krishna's will I overate, Krishna's will, so many things you can say are Krishna's will, but we do have our independence. If Krishna wants, I will surrender. No, if you want, you will surrender. Not if Krishna wants. Krishna does want. Krishna says, Sarvadharma Brijajam, I want you to surrender. And so he wants. It's an order. So how can you say Krishna doesn't want? But he also says, Ye tamam prapajante tam sataiva bhajamiham, which is the verse we quoted today from the Bhagavad Gita, that he reciprocates with us. Okay, so I guess that is it for today. And tomorrow we will continue reading about the Rasa dance, and we went through end of chapter 30, 31, 32, and part of 33 today. Thank you very much. All glories to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Whoops.